Those of you who have not heard of LaterPay, this is an amazing opportunity to hear about this great company. I happened to share a stage with Cosmin last year on the panel at one of the other stages, and it's a great opportunity for publishers to monetize their content, but he'll tell you all about it because he is obviously the specialist. So, Cosmin, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? It feels pretty awkward to kind of talk to oneself and don't know whether someone is hearing you or not. Well, thank you very much for being here. I'm going to try to share with you a couple of insights that we gain. So I'm going to tell you what we think the problem is that we are fighting against, then going to try to tell you in a couple of minutes what LaterPay does and show you some results that we've been able to generate with publishers in Germany, especially in Germany. Unfortunately, some of the really juicy numbers I'm not allowed to publish. We are still fighting for them because publishers don't want to have their numbers published so that other publishers can kind of gauge and compare against them. But I was still able to get some of the interesting numbers. So basically, a long time ago, a newspaper or magazine was the people's portal to the world. So people bought that newspaper or magazine, and that was the place where they found all the information that they needed. And with the internet, of course, this whole thing changed. Now, all of a sudden, people go to the sites where they want to consume content, whether it's social media or the publisher's own website, and they usually want cherry picking. They just want one article, two articles, maybe 10, 20 sometimes, but usually it's about cherry picking. And if you look at news websites in Germany, and you look at the numbers closely, you see that only about 1% to 3% of all users ever reach the paywall. That's not the amount of users that you can basically transfer into a paywall. That's just a total addressable universe. It's 1% to 3% for news companies. That's why there was a shift towards 10 articles a month and then 5 articles a month to try to push more and more users into paywalls. But basically, paywalls are a little bit difficult, and what we see is that whenever we try to bring in some innovation to the market, we are facing the same question all over again, which is you can innovate as much as you want as long as you give us paywalls. So you can give us different ways of using paywalls, but it still has to be a paywall. And we've banged our heads against the wall so many times, and that's why it reminds me of Henry Ford's quote with the black cars. We at LaterPay thought a long time about how to bridge the gap between the user and the publisher, between user-centric models that really address the user in a way how he is used to consume content on the internet, and basically the publisher who has one interest, which is to make money and ideally to have recurring payments from users. And what we did is we introduced the running tab to the internet economy by saying people know this principle from real life. They just agree to pay later, they start consuming, aggregating, and then they register and pay once they reach a certain threshold. In this we patented, we started introducing that and starting making some interesting experience with it. And the main point with the running tab was that it had to be very, very simple. Meaning you see the content, you click on the teaser or on a little window that tells you that you can agree to pay later, and you get the content right away. So basically it has to work within seconds to carry the user from being a user who never paid before for content to a user who starts actually paying for content. So at the end of the day, the whole magic that we needed to develop was to bring users from 0, I've never paid before, to 1 cent and up. Everything that's below or above 5 cents is basically statistics and user experience, but it's all about making it super simple for users to consume. The single purchases, or what we called pay-per-use, is basically meant to make users aware of content, of paid content, in telling them that content is worth something to them. And without forcing them into a subscription, we thought hard about how to make that in a very, very simple way so that a user has just a few seconds to agree to pay later. Then you can hand out the content to him without any registration and without any payments at that point in time. And what that creates is trust. Users start understanding why they should pay for content, what the benefit is beyond or behind the content that you're offering. And this was also the main goal at Spiegel when we started working with Spiegel. The main goal was to make users aware of paid content and of the quality of content. It was not the business metrics behind it saying we want to earn money from day one. Leading users to understand that content is worth something went perfectly well through single purchases. I'm going to show the numbers a little bit later. The second model was time passes. All of a sudden, we started getting emails from users who said that they get the system, but they don't want to confirm over and over again that they're going to pay later. So they asked for flat rates for models, which are basically time units that they buy. It could be an hour, a day, a week, a month, or a year. And then they don't see us for that time that they have purchased. And once again, if you do that below €5, you'll have to pay later. If you do that above €5, you'll have to pay immediately. And that led to the next model, which was subscriptions. So all of a sudden, people who had time passes for quite a while were interested in moving up the conversion funnel, if you want, and become subscribers. But they got there by themselves. We didn't force them. We just offered a variety of choices. And you saw how users are at the beginning very cautious in consuming content, but then once they get it, once they get your benefits, they move up the conversion funnel. And basically, this is exactly what we've built. We didn't build a model. We just built a conversion funnel that starts with selling individual purchases, leading users to become time pass buyers, more loyal customers if you want, and eventually turning some of them into subscribers. Now, the whole point here was to monetize some of the 97% of the users who never reached a paywall. And I think we've done that pretty well, because it was a very interesting experience when we started with Spiegel. We had almost only complaints from people who had a subscription to Spiegel already and who didn't want to pay twice. But we didn't have complaints from people who said, why are you guys selling this content? And this is something that we've seen across merchants, from bloggers and up to Gruner & Jahr and to Spiegel, to companies which are very small up to very big. The same experience. People didn't have a problem understanding the system and actually paying for content. And the conversion funnel gives newspapers or content providers the chance to understand how their users think. Look at the prices. No one really knows what the right price for content is. There are companies who make a lot of money just trying to recommend to you prices. But at the end of the day, it's the consumer who shows whether he's willing to pay for content, unbundled or rebundled content. So what we've learned, and let me tell you just 4 things that we've learned as a summary. Users are willing to pay for content. When we started with Spiegel, in the first 5 months, Spiegel sold 1.5 million articles with LaterPay in the first 5 months. And there was no special advertising, no promotion, nothing whatsoever. It was just there on the website. And those 1.5 million articles recruited themselves from 3 to 4 articles a day. So Spiegel publishes only 3 to 4 articles per day, paid content articles, and out of those, we were able to sell, or Spiegel was able to sell 1.5 million articles. What's also interesting is that from the people who paid, and that's one of the cool numbers that I hope to be able to publish very soon, but from the people who paid, we had no chargebacks until today, like 0 chargebacks, which is for us astonishing, but at the same time it's not, because people deliberately chose to start collecting purchases. They had their time to fill up their invoices and to pay later. So it was a deliberate decision. There was no reason for them to make a chargeback. And we see that in the numbers, 0 chargebacks. We did some A/B testing. This is not with Spiegel, with other customers, mid-size publishers. And we asked users to pay now or to pay later. And the result was 4.5 times more users decided to pay later, which is kind of cheesy to say it because it's so simple that, of course, people would prefer to pay later, but the numbers show that almost 5 times higher, looking at the conversion rate. Of the users who reached the €5, 80% plus paid, which is the number that was also of interest to us and also astonishing, that people don't per se intend to cheat. If they get what they want, if they get what they expect, there's no reason for them to cheat. So we still have 20%, but still 80% of the users is quite a lot, and we consider that to be a big success for the time being. Here's a look at a small publisher. We call it a blogger. He has 43,000 unique users per month, and by combining single sale and time pass, we were able to pay out to him almost 21,000 euros over 1 year. And this is paid out revenues. This is not what people promise to pay later. This is still coming up, but this is what we paid out already. And what was interesting here is that he started with pay-per-use, so he started selling individual articles. And then when he offered time passes, we saw a boost. People used or bought 4, 5, 6 articles, and then they migrated over to become time pass users, which made sense to us. By offering a choice, you don't lose subscribers and you don't cannibalize your offerings. This is something that we've observed across all companies that we've worked with until now. All of them, from Spiegel to Hamburger Morgenpost, who used LaterPay for 1 year, also to bloggers and smaller publishers. They did not lose subscribers. They did not cannibalize their product offerings. And this is one of the most important questions that publishers always ask themselves. If I do this, do I harm myself there? And we found that this is not the case. So Bergedorfer Zeitung, which is a newspaper that belongs to Funke, has seen time pass basically boosting up by 42% from July to November 2016, while offering single purchases at the same time. So the same effect that we've seen before with a blogger, we've seen now with a local newspaper, just exactly the same, just the numbers are a little bit different. And because of that, so they started with pay-per-use, then they moved over to time passes, and now they are preparing subscriptions because the conversion funnel works for them. When we look at the way how the conversion funnel really works by numbers, 70% of the revenues that we generate right now for our customers are from pay-per-use, from a single sales, if you want, single articles that are sold, but 30% are from time passes. So now users are pushing more and more towards more economical models like the time passes, and we are going to publish some numbers regarding subscriptions as soon as the numbers make sense and we can look across a couple of publishers. This is one of the first proof points where we saw that across merchants, everyone who used single purchases to get users educated and then offered time passes was able to migrate users along the funnel from being an occasional user to being a more loyal user and generated more revenues. And what we've seen is, and this is what we've expected, so this is something that's built in our business model. Below the waterline, you see all the promised revenues. And people start piling up those revenues on their running tab, and they need to reach €5 or $5 in value before we ask them to register and pay. Now what happens is that you're going to see a constant revenue stream, even though some of your content may be a little bit weak over time, or sorry, I think you cannot see that curve too well, but you see here that some of the merchants have less and less paid content published, but at the same time, the revenues that we paid out started to grow. And this is an interesting fact that we saw, that when you look at the iceberg, we pay out what's above the waterline, but there's a much higher underlying potential from users. And it may take 3, 4, 5 months. We have users who pay after 6 months. It takes them 6 months to reach the €5 and register and pay. But the point is, they reach the €5 and register and pay. So we have a few customers who, for a variety of reasons, are no longer customers with us. They still receive four-digit amounts per month, as from the users who now go across other publications, reach the €5, register and pay. So we didn't count on the mass market scale effect now because we are too small for that, but we start seeing the first signs of that. And we see that users really don't have a problem with paying for content, which is a question that I think everyone worried about and wondered about in the market. What we've seen is that all customers that started to experiment had a tremendous value from that experimentation. So basically, yes, you could serve a banana as a banana, but you could serve it in so many different ways. And if you start experimenting with prices, with unbundling, with rebundling, you will see that the users don't complain about that. Users are much more innovation-friendly than publishers may think. And because they are used to the internet to serve them the way it does, they take this as a given. They don't question that. So you're going to be very surprised with what you learn when you start experimenting with different ways of monetizing your content. Needless to say, there will be hits and misses, and like when you talk about startups, we always talk about failing fast, which is something that publishers try to oppose as much as they can. But what it means is you put something out there, you break it, you see how it works, you make it better, and you come back. And what we've seen so far is that the internet may never forget, but it always forgives. People don't care. Today you have one model, a couple of months later you try out something new. They don't care. The only thing that they seem to care by the numbers is the quality of the content and what you offer to them, and the way how you offer it to them. So with that, I'll make it short or shorter tonight, simply because the drinks are waiting, and usually I'm always the one to kill the day. So I'll make it shorter tonight. Please let me have a couple of your questions, if you have any, and let me address those in the time that we have remaining.
Yes, thanks. I think you said that 80% of the people actually pay, right? So 20% does not. How do you go about those 20%?
We don't. We just block them from further usage of content on other companies' websites. So as long as you didn't pay...
Everyone on the platform?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But we don't go after them, simply because for €5, it doesn't make sense. It would cost a ton of money, as you well know. So you basically have to ask someone to pay €100 to make sure that whoever does the dunning gets his money. And they get punished more if they can simply not access the content that they obviously liked, but they're not willing to pay for.
Yeah, and they don't resubscribe through another email address or whatever.
They could do that, but now we're able to detect that. So basically, if you are losing invoices, we can see that, and we now start forcing a pre-registration. It's like, you seem to have very high security settings, please pre-register. It's just username, password.
All right.
But we don't go after them.
This is all, from what I've seen, very focused on a consumer model, which makes a lot of sense. Do you have any examples in the B2B world, either with a corporation paying or with individuals within a corporation who may be paying individually?
Not yet. No, not yet. Currently, it's just the B2C model. Well, basically, we work with publishers, but they then serve it as a B2C model.
Thank you.
We try to focus at the beginning on the publishing market, just to keep focus, but it's definitely on our agenda.
Technically, how do you identify these readers? Do you do it with cookies or?
I'm the only one who cannot hear you.
I see. Okay. How do you identify the readers? Do you do it with cookies, or what is the technique you use?
What we do is we are looking at different parameters that we can read out from your device. It's cookie-based, but it's also more than that. So IP address, cookie, it's a browser fingerprint, and then we are experimenting around with things like atomic clock versus the clock on your machine, which is unique for 8 minutes, agree 100%, and then it deteriorates. So we have a couple of metrics that we are looking at. But what we do not do is we don't use super cookies, and we don't make it NSA style. We could track users very hard, and we decided not to. So we take the 20%, 30% even who don't want to pay, but for that we make it very convenient and rather, let's say, respecting privacy policies with users.
I would like to know whether you have any international experience. Did you try this model in other countries or only Germany?
Well, I know Austria doesn't count as international, so I don't bring that up. We are preparing right now. We are in the preparations right now. It's a policy of LaterPay not to communicate before we go live, but we are right now extending or expanding to another territory, and it's not Europe. So I think in 1 year I'll be able to show some numbers from there, hopefully. Maybe let me grab that question for a second. We've seen a lot of interest from countries like the US, where publishers are less risk averse, where they think more about how we can experiment, how do we find out what works and what not, and how do we address users with user-centric models. So we've got these kind of requests so many more times from the US, for example, than from here. And people come to us with very, very clear questions, a set of questions, and almost all of them are the same. So you see a risk-averse market here in Germany where everyone is looking to the US and see what they do so that they can basically adopt that model. And you see in the US a movement which is whatever is out there, let's put it out there for a test, see whether it works or not, and get in easy and get out easy.
Anybody else? Cosmin, thank you so much. A round of applause for Cosmin.